My name's Richard Moss. About 32 years ago I was practicing medicine. Was seeing a patient in the emergency room and was about to give him some medication to treat him for pain and then maybe admit him to the hospital and observe him for a while after he had just been in an auto accident. And a voice inside my head, just as we were about to give him these injections, said, "You have nothing to share with this man except love." I put my hands on his forehead and on his belly. I got blazing hot. His eyes rolled back in his head. He fell asleep. The room was so hot that one of the nurses went to try to open a window. When he woke up half an hour later, he had no pain, no signs of trauma. We sent him home. And I went home the next day thinking, what in the world was that? It's been years since that time, and I left the practice of medicine. For now 30 years I've been teaching about being really alive, deeply alive, the kind of experience that makes you know why you want to be here on this planet. Because so much of the time we're just in survival mode, we're just keeping up with our lives, and we lose touch with what really matters to us. In my work, which is long retreats, I do them in the US, and that's the heart of my work, is to work in deep retreat with people for anywhere from 3 days to 10 days, and I do them in Europe and the United States. But the key to the work, it's completely experiential. I want people to have a taste of something so profoundly alive in them because it happened to me. About 30 years ago, a black butterfly landed on my forehead after the two butterflies had been mating. One was a dark black butterfly, one was white. I watched them mate on a branch about 3 feet from my face. And then they broke off, danced in the air, the black one landed here. And I had been in a time of my life of deep questioning, and I would even say depression, despair. Working, doing medicine, but really feeling cut off from my soul. And it landed on my forehead, and suddenly there was absolute clarity about life. The world that I perceived and who I was, they unified in a place I'd never known before. It was the awakening of what I would call the deeper function of consciousness. And it was the first true experience of being utterly and completely in the now. I'd been in the now as a rock climber and as a mountaineer. I knew what it was like to go into that state of flow where you're just so completely alive, time stops, and then afterwards the colors are vivid, the light is alive, it's scintillating. But this time it lasted for months and months, and with it came a keen sense of intuition without trying, a knowing of what was going on in people's hearts. People would get next to me, they'd start crying, and I would listen to them, and it was as if what was in their heart, what was not being lived in their life, was being asked for words from me, or their suffering that they lived with a lot of nobility and internal hiding in a way, protecting people from that kind of pain. It could come out in my presence. And so that was the beginning of my career as a consciousness teacher. You know, what I learned in my work is that you can teach people how to fall so fully into the present that they experience being in love with life, feeling life is in love with them, really touching something profound in themselves, but most people can't keep it. It's like people who have a holiday or a vacation or do a meditation retreat. They go on some kind of workshop, and then for a little while their world is changed, and then it reverses. And what I realized is that what I understood is what I call the mandala of being, is that when we lose connection to our deeper or essential self, when we lose touch with being fully in the now, there's only 4 places we go. First of all, the notion of a mandala. Mandalas are circles. They're symbolic representations of the self. They're forms of sacred art from the East. And they're circles strongly oriented toward the center with 4 basic directions. Now, they can get more complicated, but these 4 basic directions I understood were that when we leave the present moment, the mind is in the past or the mind is in the future. And also We think we're in the present moment, but actually we're just making ourselves special with stories about ourselves, so the mind will go to ideas and beliefs and judgments about ourselves that make us special in a grandiose direction, or make us special in a kind of depressive, self-negating direction. And the other side of that is we have stories about other people, we have stories about the world, we have stories about money and beliefs and judgments and stories about everything. We look at the world, we look at our own ideas, and we look at other people, we make them objects, we judge those objects. So when we are not right here in the present, we're in the past, the future, stories about ourselves, stories of others. And when you understand that, you have a compass. And the compass gives you a shout, like something silly from Harry Potter, and it says to you, hey, come back from the past. Because when the mind's in the past, we're in guilt, blame and regret, nostalgia. When the mind's in the future, we're in oscillating back and forth between things we tell ourselves that make us hopeful, things we tell ourselves that make us frightened. And when the stories are about ourselves, it's never who we really are. They're stories that just make us special. Well, I'm smarter than you, or I'm more loyal, or I'm someone that's dependable, or stories that make us special in a negative sense. I'm not lovable, I'm confused, I can't face the problems in life, I don't know what to do with myself. And then the stories go to the other people, and they either make us angry or they make us hurt. We have judgments about people that make us envious and jealous and angry and resentful, or we give them so much power that we're the one that becomes hurt. So we're either the perpetrator, judging them, or we give them the power to feel judged by them, to take away our sense of self. Once you understand there's only 4 ways you can leave the now, then you have a way of living your life more and more in the present moment. And then you get to trust something completely different that is spontaneously present within you, and is a state of gratitude at times, and joy and forgiveness and trust and compassion. You know that everybody else that's upset about anything is upset because of the stories they're telling themselves about themselves or others or the past or the future. And you just start to live this compass that I call the Mandala of Being, and that I talk about very clearly in my book, The Mandala of Being. And then you have a path, literally a practice, for starting to have more peace and joy in your life. What's my work about? My work is about how we pollute ourselves. We only live in the now. There's only the now. There's nothing but the now. Yet through our thoughts, we can turn the now into something frightening, something full of guilt, something full of anger, something full of hurt, something full of self-importance or depressiveness. It's like we know that we're polluting the world. We know that we're dumping garbage into the air. We know that we're polluting the ocean and dumping garbage into the ocean. But we don't realize how with every thought we're dumping garbage into ourselves. And if we don't stop polluting ourselves, polluting our now, polluting our I am, we're never really going to learn to stop polluting a marriage, or polluting the way we raise our kids, or polluting our educational processes, and ultimately polluting international relationships. We're going to be living from ideas that are all about safety and security, and we're not going to be living from something that has soul. We're going to continue to be a culture in which the soul orbits the economy, instead of the soul of each human being and of humanity as collectively being at the core of what we live for, with the economy orbiting that. My name is Richard Moss. It was a time when I was a doctor looking at things that people really suffered in their bodies. Now I've spent more than half my lifetime treating the soul.